You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Welcome back, everyone. I get to start us off this week, which is super exciting.
Exciting. Here we go.
How are you doing, Kirk?
You know, I'm doing great. It's having a lovely week. How are you doing?
Having a great week as well. It's good times, good friends. Can't go wrong.
And
all right.
And no bed bugs.
Oh, and no bed bugs.
Maybe someday we'll tell the story of why I brought that up in some bonus material for our patrons.
Yep. Oh.
There was an incident.
Many.
Okay,
anyway.
Sorry to bring up the incident.
Oh, anyway. So this week, I want to tell a pretty fun story.
Okay.
So in September 2022, we're going to go southwest, Kirk. A couple of researchers. Southwest of Minnesota.
Okay.
This is where I orient myself. We're from Minnesota. We're in Minnesota. It's fine. All right. So, two researchers. One, a researcher at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, which I'm very positive you are familiar with, as well
very
as...
much
so this researcher was Jordan Boersma. Co-led an expedition with another man, another researcher who I'm not going to say where he's from because that would give the story away. John C. Mittermeier.
Okay.
Which I find to be a really fun last name, Mittermeier. They led an expedition to Papua New Guinea. So they were on a mission to find a bird. In coordination with the local people of Papua New Guinea. They were looking to find a bird that has not been seen by Western science since two specimens were collected in 1882.
Whoa.
Yeah. So a bit over about
Nice.
It was 140 years.
That is a long, long time.
That is a long time. However, these scientists knew that this bird still existed. They were pretty sure that it was still around because the locals, especially local hunters on Papua New Guinea, had seen the bird and several times over the past 140 years. So the locals had seen this bird several times over that period of 140 years, and it wasn't unknown to them. In fact, it was pretty important culturally and has been featured in their local mythology and things as well. But scientists research science. We want to know more. We want to see it. We want to document it. We want to have hands-on experience and have it written down in a certain way. So
gather certain kinds of data, sure.
Exactly. So these two, Jordan Boersma and John C. Mittermeier, led a team of 8, which was not just scientists, but also included local bird nerds and bird experts. So they were...
Nice.
It was about a month-long expedition. And Papua New Guinea is not an easy place to lead any sort of expedition. It is a spot where...
No, it is not.
There are a lot of mountain regions. It's geothermically active. It's hot. The rivers are still like cutting through the land. So you're going to be crossing over rivers multiple different times. There's lots of biting insects. There's leeches. There's this, that, and the other. And it's just an entire mess, right? To try to traverse.
Well,
If you're not
I can
used
add
to
one
it.
more thing to that. I know my friend who was just trying to go there was all worried because he got as far as Singapore and then was going to head over to Papua New Guinea and found out that there was basically like fuel and energy shortages going on.
Mhm.
And they were basically advising no one to travel there because they were worried there was going to be like riots and outbreaks of, instability because of this, fuel shortage. And so they were like, yeah, maybe now's not the time to go. And he was kind of like, I'm already almost there. What do you mean now's not? It's not like he did get to go, just not to all the places he wanted to in Papua New Guinea, but
Right.
it's a very challenging part of the world to travel to.
Absolutely. So this group was working, setting up camera traps, working with local hunters, working with local bird experts, trying to get any sort of sign that this bird, this was still there.
Right.
So it's a month-long expedition. They're looking at all their cameras, they're checking the traps. On the second to last day before they left,
Oh, what'd they get?
they got a video of this
Nice.
bird. Doka Nason was the local bird expert who actually set up this trap, and they were able to capture for the first time in 140 years the black-naped pheasant pigeon.
Black-naped pheasant pigeon. That's quite a name.
It truly is. And it was first described in 1882 in Western Science. And honestly, everyone was super excited. John Mittermeier, who is the director of the Lost Birds program at the American Bird Conservancy, hence why I didn't tell you where he was from, he said, and I quote,
At first I assumed meant like not what country he was from, not what his organization was.
no.
That makes sense now. Okay.
He said, and I quote, to find something that's been gone for that long, you're thinking it's almost extinct. And then to figure out that it's not extinct, it feels like finding a unicorn or a Bigfoot. They were so excited. Like,
Yeah, I mean, a unicorn or a Bigfoot that people who live there are telling you they see all the time, but yeah.
right. But it was still a rediscovery, and they couldn't have done it without the local
for
hunters'
sure.
knowledge, because they were able to point to where they would
Very
probably be found. So this bird, generally speaking, is probably one of the most endangered birds in New Guinea, actually. It doesn't have much when it comes to habitat, what it needs. It is a ground-dwelling bird. It's called black-naped because it looks like it
Okay.
has this really big black collar. Think of a pigeon. It's pretty much a pigeon and a pheasant, which to me, a pheasant already kind of looks like a pigeon. So it is a large pigeon with rusty brown, a rusty brown head, rusty brown like wings and butt and tail, and underneath belly,
Right.
and then in like a really wide collar is a black like collar around its neck nape area.
Cool.
Yeah. So I just wanted to share this story of finding this bird. It was a collaboration. They were it's part of a group trying to find. It's called the Search for Lost Birds, and their whole plan is to try to rediscover more than 150 avian species that have been declared extinct, but also
Wow.
haven't been seen for at least a decade. So this, for example, this black-naped pigeon hadn't been seen for over 140 years. So it's like it hadn't been declared extinct, but we hadn't seen it.
But it could have been, yeah.
But it could have been. And it's really cool, the video that they got. And this is very similar to when I did a story, I think it came out on June 1st this past year, of this giant, like, bee. Or no, that's when it was end of May. It was this huge, large bee that they hadn't been able to find in forever. This is a similar idea where the researchers and the locals, everyone was so excited that they were able to find this chicken-sized pigeon. Just
chicken pigeon.
So excited. And the video they got, they actually saw like the whole bird, and you see like it actually fanned its tail feathers and everything, and you looked at it and it was
cool,
a black-naped pigeon. So this is just a really cool, fun thing.
It's so cool to sort of rediscover, if you will, some of these species. A lot of times you had someone who went into an area, did a bunch of collection, and they were there for a short period of time, and they may have just happened to collect a single bird of a certain species, and you don't really know, is this something that was super common, or do they just happen to catch a super rare bird? And so you come back a couple hundred years later and you're like, no one's really looked. Maybe they're just everywhere, or maybe, they happen to get one of the last ones. Or even something there's been some debate over, I know, is there's certain species in some of these specimen collections and stuff where they either have a photo of it or a drawing or an actual specimen, and you're like, is this just like a weird hybrid that someone caught? And the reason no one has found one is that it was the only one, because it was like a one-off hybrid between two species that don't normally interbreed. So it's such a complex thing to know, like, is this a species that went extinct, or was this an oddity that happened to be captured and it was sort of a one-off, and we're looking for something that never really existed? So it's a fascinating topic. We can probably, I imagine we'll share about this sort of thing more on the show too.
We absolutely will. But that's all I have for you this week. I just wanted to share a little bit about the rediscovery of the black-naped pheasant pigeon, which is a very large name for a decent-sized bird, actually. Even though we truly don't know much else about this bird. We've gotten video, we know where it lives, and that's about it. Which I think is fascinating.
Cool.
Like, to not know more about a bird. Like, of all the things to not know much about. Like, I feel like birds, like insects, we're learning all the time. There's so many species. But birds, they're everywhere. It's wild. Anyway, that's a rant for another time. We're going to take a break. And when we return, Kirk has something for us.
All right, so welcome back, everybody. This week, I have to admit, I was going to talk about a strange underwater creature. But I got sidetracked thinking about water. So we'll get to the creature maybe next week or sometime soon. But
I hope so. I love underwater creatures.
I know you do. And I was thinking, you did a very Kirk topic last week.
I did.
And you did a very Kirk topic this week. I kind of wish I had actually stuck with that topic because it would have been really nice. But no, you have to wait till next week maybe.
Okay.
Or maybe I'll get sidetracked into some other fascinating topic and won't get to it. But
that happens a lot to us.
Yeah. So I was reminded recently that I live in a strange place. And doing a show called Strange by Nature and working as a professional naturalist, surrounded by nature all day long, this strange thing happens where I need to remind myself what strange is. Because the things that we see every day, while they may seem commonplace to us, are likely strange to someone else. And this is true for all of us, not just people who are out in nature all day. You get used to the things you see all the time and don't realize that maybe a certain plant in your yard, even the type of grass or the type of trees may
Oh.
seem strange to somebody else who's not from your area.
Oh, that happens to me all the time. Like, I have a bunch of non-naturalist friends. So, like, we'll be walking and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
they'll be like, oh, what is this thing? This is so weird. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's just like
You're like, this
wood
is everywhere.
sorrel. It's like, what? That's not weird. And they're like, I've never seen this before. I'm like, it's literally everywhere. Anyway.
It's grown out of the crack in the sidewalk. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so that's the thing. What can be strange is open to interpretation. I think for another example that came to mind is the great golden digger wasps that I mentioned way back. I think in like episode 4 or something like that.
Yeah.
The episode was called
love those.
Microepilons and Assorted Nightmare Fuel. Really fun episode if you want to check it out.
Yeah.
These wasps are fascinating and bizarre, but to me they're like
so
commonplace.
cool.
I see them pretty much every day at work. They're like right outside the door. So, it's all what you're used to. And I was reminded of something like this recently when I had an old friend come visit. My friend Katie, who I've known since high school, came to visit last month. And while she grew up here, she has most recently lived in Colorado for a while. And that's quite different to Minnesota habitat-wise.
Yes.
And as she was driving around the part of the state that I live in, she commented on how she was just blown away by all of the lakes. And Minnesota is known, of course, as the land of 10,000 lakes. It's sort of our state,
Isn't it more like
motto or whatever.
13,000 or something?
That's the number I had in my head. I looked it up. I guess the most recent number is 11,842.
Okay.
When you use sort of the standard definition of lake set by the state. But if you just go by like a general definition of a body of water, you end up including lakes that are smaller than 10 acres. In Minnesota, we're pretty stodgy about like, if it's not 10 acres, we don't even count it. Whereas other states would be like, are you kidding me? That's like the biggest lake we have in town, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
if you actually just go by all the, bodies of water and whatnot, you end up with about 124,662 lakes in Minnesota. So that's a lot.
That is a lot.
That's a super lot. People, if you've never been here, they're everywhere, right? And this is what really kind of blew my friend away, who now lives out of state. Even though she grew up here, when she came back, she just kept commenting on how everything was so green and there's just water everywhere. And I had to laugh because we were in the middle of like a huge drought and things were looking yellow to me and the lakes were all looking low, but she was just blown away by all the water. And she grew up here, right? But I think maybe coming back as an adult, it really started to strike her like, oh my gosh, I didn't think of it when I was a kid, but now driving through, you're like, look at all these lakes. So I did a quick little look at Google Maps to check this all out. It takes me 18 minutes to drive 12 miles from my house to my work. I tried to count all the bodies of water within like a mile of the road on that drive, and I lost count somewhere around
like
42.
42? That is much larger than I thought it
lakes.
was.
Between my house and my work, which is only 12 miles away. So I looked at that. That means on my 18-minute commute, I'm passing about 2.5 lakes per minute on my commute. So yeah, there's a lot of lakes around here.
There's a lot of lakes.
So the question, and I don't think of that as strange, right?
No.
But for people in a lot of the parts of the country, that is completely and utterly bizarre that we just have lakes everywhere.
I mean,
And so-
I see the largest lake by surface area on the planet every day.
Right. And that also is just a totally weird thing. But even up where you are, there's a lot of there's a lot of lakes up in northern Minnesota too.
Oh,
Depends on exactly which part of the state you're in. Some parts have more than others, but the whole Boundary Waters area, for example, is just littered with so many lakes you can hardly count them. So the question is, why? What strange thing happened that caused there to be so many lakes here, while some other states have almost none? And the answer is ice. Lots and lots of ice.
I was
And
wondering
I'm not
if
talking
you were
about
going to
winter, I'm
say
talking about
something
summer
about
too.
Yeah, like I thought you were going to maybe bring up glaciation.
Yeah, so during the last ice age, it snowed all winter and it snowed all summer too. Massive, get this,
Oof.
mile thick glaciers. A mile or in some places 2 miles thick, right? Covered
Oh my
much of
God.
Minnesota. And this ice age lasted something like 2 million years. So
That's so much
it's really
ice.
only been the last 10,000 years that Minnesota has been free from glaciers.
Oh
And
man.
Minnesota is located in a really interesting spot in that we are where, at least in the last most recent glaciation, we are where the glaciers stopped. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to simplify here a bit because the topic of glaciation is super complex, but I want you to picture a bulldozer with a front plow that is like 2 miles tall and hundreds of miles wide. That's basically what a glacier is, moving in extreme slow
No.
motion. It
Oh.
inches south and just wipes out everything in its path over the
Yeah.
course of thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
Uh-huh.
The earth is being scraped clean down to bedrock. And at the leading edge of that glacier, though, you're going to get all kinds of debris being pushed along. And as
Mm-hmm.
glaciers started and stopped and started and stopped, as they retreated and advanced and changed direction, the landscape at the leading edge became a real mess. Picture like piles of rocks, massive broken chunks of ice, essentially Landbergs. Picture
Mm-hmm.
huge long hillsides and tons and tons and tons of sand. So as the glaciers advanced and retreated and changed course, they did this over and over and over right on top of Minnesota, especially the part of Minnesota where I live.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made a real mess of the landscape, but it was about to get weirder and real melty. So when like uh as the glaciers began their final retreat, right? They didn't just melt and leave in like a nice orderly fashion. The leading edge
Right.
melted away unevenly, leaving behind even more Landbergs, these big chunks of ice that have broken off, which could be just absolutely massive. And
Right.
as the main body of the glacier is melting, huge amounts of sand and rocks that have been picked up over millions of years are melting out and flowing south in massive amounts of water. And so this muddy, sandy, rocky meltwater encounters these Landbergs, and they became surrounded by water that deposited the rocks around the ice. As the water has to slow down to go around that ice, that Landberg, some of the
Right.
heavier sediment starts to fall out toward the bedrock. And so when these Landbergs eventually melted shortly thereafter, you could see where they had been as new land had been built up around them as all this debris trying to get away from the melting glaciers got deposited there. And the
Wild.
depressions left behind by the Landbergs became lakes. And a really interesting
Mm-hmm.
thing to do around these parts where I live is you can walk around a lake. And this is true for quite a few northern states
Oh yeah.
in the US or even other parts of the world where there were glaciers. If you walk around in these areas or even just look at a topo map, you can see that nearly every lake in this region has hills around it, and those hills are usually higher on the north side. So you can literally tell what direction the melted, water with sand and rock came from because
Mm-hmm.
it piled up more on the side that it was coming from. So it's like which side of this lake has a bigger hill? Oh, that side. That's the direction that the water was coming from as the glaciers were melting. It's not always from the north because things were getting all twisty and turny, and if you had tons of Landbergs all in one spot, which you very much did right by my house, the
Right.
water was taking all kinds of crazy paths, and you got all a bunch of really weird patterns. So, in this way, like we can reconstruct what happened here 10,000 years ago, which really blows my mind. These are events that happened long, long ago, but with just a little
Insane.
observation, we can piece together like where ancient rivers were and tell these complex stories of what happened on the landscape and why it looks the way it does. Like why is that hill there? Why is
Oh
that
yeah.
lake there? You can figure out the answer, which I think is so, so cool. So I guess really fundamentally, I was going to talk about the strange underwater creature, but when I really got to think about water, somehow I just got on this topic and I couldn't get out of my head, like what a strange story it is that we had Landbergs 10,000 years ago that are now responsible for the 10,000 lakes that we brag about
Right.
in Minnesota today. So I thought it's kind of a cool
That is so wild.
connection there. Really my sources this week talking about this was my brain, but also PolitiFact was where I was able to track down that 124,000 lakes number. So thank you to them for helping calculate that. They had a great story about an ongoing debate between Minnesota and Wisconsin over who has more lakes.
Oh,
and,
Minnesota,
Minnesota
obviously.
says, look, Wisconsin, they claim, they go, well, look, you guys officially say you have 11,000 some. Our official count is 15,000. So we win. And
No.
like, well, yeah, but you guys define lakes different than we do. And
if we
have a
use your
unified
version
definition, we have like, what would I say, 124,000? So
yeah, something like that.
yeah, sorry, Wisconsin, we still win.
Yeah, we do.
So anyways, that's what I've
What
got
a point
this
of
week,
pride
you
that we
guys.
all have as Minnesotans. Like, no.
We got the most
We have the lakes. We
Yeah.
have the lakes.
I think I remember hearing there's so many lakes in Minnesota. If you were to like measure all of the shoreline, there's like more shoreline in the state of Minnesota than there is in the entire continental coast of the United States.
Yeah, only Alaska has a seat in shoreline.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So
that's
anywho,
insane.
that's what I have. Thank you everyone for spending time with us and hearing
Thanks,
about
everyone.
whatever strange natural history stuff pops into our brain. We'll be back next week. You know who's back next week?
Victoria!
Victoria's back. We're so excited to see her then, and you'll get to hear her as well. Everybody, just
Thanks
have an
everyone
awesome,
for
great
listening
week.
to
Thank
today's
you so
show.
much
Be
for
sure to
being part of
subscribe.
our family.
New episodes
And,
drop
we'll
every
see you next
Wednesday,
week.
and we love sharing
Thanks,
this
everyone.
strange world with
Bye.
all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.